The Devshirme system was one of the most unique and defining aspects of the Ottoman Empire's military and civil service recruitment. Instituted by Sultan Murad I in the late 14th century, the Devshirme system was a method of conscription that required Christian boys from the empire's conquered territories, particularly in the Balkans, to be taken from their homes, converted to Islam, and trained to serve the Ottoman state. This practice, while controversial, played a critical role in the empire's growth and success. It was a system that changed the course of Ottoman history, establishing a highly loyal and powerful military force, the Janissaries, and creating an elite class of civil servants loyal only to the Sultan. At the heart of the Devshirme system was the need to maintain control over the growing empire. As the Ottoman Empire expanded across diverse lands with varied cultures, religions, and languages, the need for a centralized, loyal army and bureaucracy became apparent. The existing local systems, with their tribal allegiances and regional loyalties, could not be relied upon to serve the central authority. Murad I, recognizing this vulnerability, devised the Devshirme system as a way to create a professional and loyal military force that would answer only to the Sultan. The term Devshirme itself means blood tax in Turkish, signifying the high cost of this practice, which involved forcibly taking young boys from their families. While the system was designed to bolster the Ottoman army, it also served to strengthen the empire's administration. The boys were selected based on their physical and intellectual potential, trained and given positions of power within the military or civil service. For many of these young recruits, this system represented an opportunity to rise above their humble origins and become influential figures within the empire. The recruitment process was meticulous. Boys between the ages of 8 and 18 were chosen from Christian families living in Ottoman-ruled territories, mostly from the Balkans. These boys were often selected through a systematic process where officials would travel to villages, assess the families, and determine which boys were suitable for service. Once chosen, the boys were removed from their families and sent to Constantinople for training. The emotional impact on these children and their families was profound. Families had to say goodbye to their sons, often never seeing them again, while the boys themselves were taken from their homes to serve the empire. Once they arrived in Constantinople, the boys underwent a thorough conversion to Islam. This was not merely a religious transformation. It was also a way of erasing their previous cultural and ethnic identities. The boys were taught the Ottoman way of life, and many went on to serve in the Janissary Corps, the elite military force that became the backbone of Ottoman military strength. Others were trained for positions in the Ottoman bureaucracy, where they would serve as high-ranking officials, governors, or viziers. Despite the coercive nature of the Devshirme system, the opportunities it provided were undeniable. The boys who were chosen for the Janissaries received an education and training that made them highly skilled soldiers. The Janissary Corps became a symbol of military excellence, and these elite soldiers were instrumental in the success of the Ottoman Empire. They were fiercely loyal to the Sultan, as their positions and livelihoods were directly tied to the Sultan's favor. The Janissaries also enjoyed significant social and economic privileges, which further reinforced their loyalty to the central authority. The Devshirme system also played a critical role in Ottoman politics. The boys who were trained for positions in the bureaucracy, known as the beylerbeyis or viziers, were placed in positions of power throughout the empire. These individuals, though often of foreign origin, were directly loyal to the Sultan, ensuring that the administration remained firmly under imperial control. Unlike the local aristocracy, who might have had competing loyalties, the Devshirme recruits were completely dependent on the Sultan's favor for their status and wealth, which made them loyal to the central government. However, despite its effectiveness, the Devshirme system was not without its criticisms. Many viewed it as a form of child exploitation and a violation of human rights, as the boys were taken from their families and subjected to a harsh, regimented training. Moreover, the religious and cultural transformation they underwent left many of these recruits feeling alienated from their roots. Still, the system's impact on the Ottoman Empire cannot be overstated. It provided the empire with a powerful military force, a loyal bureaucracy, and a centralized structure of governance that would enable the Ottomans to maintain control over vast territories for centuries. The Devshirme system wasn't just about recruitment. It was about shaping the future of the Ottoman Empire by molding a dedicated class of soldiers and administrators who owed their loyalty directly to the Sultan. Once the Christian boys were taken from their families, they were transported to Constantinople and subjected to intense physical, mental, and spiritual training. This was where the foundation of the Janissary Corps was laid, an elite military force that would eventually become the most powerful and influential group in the empire. The training process under the Devshirme system was rigorous. These boys were trained to be disciplined, strong, and obedient. Their physical conditioning included combat training, learning how to use weapons, and engaging in military exercises. But the training wasn't limited to just physical preparation. It was a full immersion into the Ottoman way of life. They were given Islamic education, taught the principles of Ottoman governance, and trained in administration and the arts of diplomacy. Their education was not just about martial skills, but about becoming loyal, effective servants of the Sultan and the empire. The boys who were selected for the Janissary Corps formed an elite group of soldiers whose loyalty was unparalleled. Unlike other soldiers, the Janissaries were not bound by tribal affiliations or local allegiances. They were men who had been taken from their homes and families at a young age, and their identities were shaped entirely by the Sultan's empire. This loyalty, forged in their childhood through their training, made them some of the most feared and respected soldiers of their time. Over time, the Janissaries became the backbone of the Ottoman military, involved in numerous military campaigns and conquests across Europe, Asia, and Africa. The Janissaries were not only fierce warriors, but they also had a unique structure and code of conduct. They were highly disciplined, and their military prowess was unmatched. The system of recruitment allowed the Ottomans to field a standing army that was always ready for battle, unlike other feudal armies that relied on local levies. This gave the Ottomans a decisive military edge over their rivals. The Janissaries, unlike other armies of the time, had a centralized command, and their loyalty to the Sultan made them an extremely cohesive unit. The training also extended beyond the battlefield. The boys selected for the Devshirme system were taught bureaucratic skills and could be appointed to administrative roles throughout the empire. These recruits, once trained, were often sent to serve in the Ottoman bureaucracy. They could become governors, advisors, or ministers, holding important positions that would allow them to shape the policies of the empire. Their loyalty to the Sultan was a key element in ensuring that the empire remained centralized and that local powers did not undermine the Sultan's authority. The Ottoman military and administrative reforms during this period ensured that the empire was both strong militarily and stable politically. The creation of the Janissaries and the efficient use of the Devshirme system to create a professional military class gave the Ottomans an unprecedented level of control over their territories. The Janissaries were deeply embedded in the fabric of the Ottoman state, serving as a tool for the Sultan to exert his power over both military and political matters. While the system produced immense loyalty and provided the Ottomans with a powerful military, it also came with some social and political consequences. As the Janissaries grew in power, they began to exert influence in the empire's politics. Over time, they became more than just soldiers. They became a political force within the empire, holding sway in the court and influencing decisions made by the Sultan. Initially, their power was a result of their loyalty, but as they gained status and privileges, they began to challenge the authority of the Sultan, leading to internal tensions within the empire. The Janissaries at one point began to demand higher wages, better living conditions, and even political power. They played a significant role in the political instability that followed Sultan Murad I's death. As the Janissary Corps grew in influence, they became less obedient and more self-serving. This shift in their behavior became evident during the reign of Sultan Ahmed I and Sultan Mahmud II, who would later face revolts and attempts by the Janissaries to influence the government. The rise of the Janissaries as a powerful group also led to challenges in the social structure of the Ottoman Empire. Initially, the Devshirme System provided an opportunity for Christian boys to rise from obscurity and achieve positions of power and prestige. However, as the Janissaries gained more influence, their position in Ottoman society became more entrenched, leading to a lack of social mobility for others in the empire. The system, once seen as an equalizer, began to concentrate power in the hands of a few, contributing to the empire's eventual internal struggles. Despite these challenges, the Janissary Corps and the Devshirme System had an undeniable impact on the success and stability of the Ottoman Empire during its golden age. The loyalty and discipline instilled in the Janissaries allowed the empire to grow and maintain its power, while the bureaucracy created by the Devshirme recruits provided stability and continuity in governance. The Ottoman military might and administrative efficiency built during this period allowed the empire to dominate its rivals and maintain control over vast and diverse territories for centuries. The Devshirme system was pivotal in the rise of the Ottoman Empire, but like many institutional systems, it had its share of challenges that eventually contributed to its decline. For centuries, the system ensured that the Ottoman military and bureaucracy were filled with highly loyal, disciplined, and capable individuals, many of whom rose to prominent positions of power. However, by the 17th century, the once formidable institution of the Janissaries and the Devshirme system began to show cracks, and the consequences of these changes played a significant role in the future of the Ottoman state. As the Janissary Corps grew in power, they began to act not just as soldiers, but as political players with influence in the imperial court. Over time, their loyalty to the Sultan began to erode. Once a symbol of unquestioning obedience and discipline, the Janissaries began to demand higher wages, better living conditions, and even a say in imperial decisions. This shift was most evident in the late 16th and 17th centuries when the Janissaries started interfering in the political affairs of the empire. Their influence began to extend far beyond the battlefield, and they became a significant factor in the empire's internal power struggles. The Sultan's loss of control over the Janissaries was not only political, it was also military. As the Janissary Corps grew more powerful, their military discipline weakened. The Janissaries, once a highly trained and professional fighting force, became less effective in battle. Their corruption and reluctance to embrace new military technologies and tactics contributed to the decline of the Ottoman military prowess. While the empire continued to grow for a while, the weakening of its elite military force was a sign that the once mighty empire was beginning to experience internal decay. Additionally, the Devshirme system itself began to decline. By the 17th century, the empire's expansion had slowed, and the need for large numbers of recruits through the Devshirme system decreased. Furthermore, the system began to encounter increasing resistance both from local populations and from within the empire. The practice of forcibly taking Christian boys from their families was increasingly seen as inhumane and exploitative. Over time, the Ottomans began to phase out the Devshirme system, and by the early 18th century, it was largely abandoned. The Sultan's inability to maintain control over the system's recruitment and the growing resentment against the forced conversions and the loss of children led to a natural end to the practice. Despite the decline of the Devshirme system, its legacy remained profoundly influential in shaping the structure of the Ottoman Empire. The Janissary Corps, despite its decline, had an enduring impact on Ottoman military culture, and many of its practices were eventually incorporated into other parts of the empire's armed forces. The legacy of the Devshirme system also lived on in the Ottoman bureaucracy, which continued to be shaped by men who had risen through the ranks of the civil service in the earlier centuries of the empire. These men, though no longer recruited through the Devshirme system, still carried the ethos of loyalty to the Sultan and the Ottoman state, ensuring that the empire continued to function as a centralized political entity. The Devshirme system and the Janissaries became intertwined in Ottoman history, shaping the empire's military and political institutions for over 300 years. While the system itself was eventually phased out, the structures it created set the foundation for the later Ottoman civil and military service, which continued to function for centuries after the system's official end. The Janissaries, despite their eventual decline, played a key role in many of the empire's greatest successes, including the conquest of Constantinople in 1453. Even in the face of internal challenges, the Ottoman military structure that evolved from the Devshirme system ensured the empire's resilience for much of its history. In terms of Ottoman society, the Devshirme system left a complex and mixed legacy. On one hand, it provided a path for upward mobility for boys from Christian families, many of whom achieved positions of power and influence in the Ottoman Empire. On the other hand, the system was rooted in the forced removal of children from their families, religious conversion, and social displacement. While the boys conscripted into the Janissaries and the bureaucracy were often treated well, the underlying system of forced recruitment and religious conversion left a bitter legacy that is still viewed with ambivalence in modern discussions about the Ottoman Empire. As the empire evolved, the shift from the Devshirme system to other forms of military and bureaucratic recruitment reflected a larger transformation within the empire itself. The decline of the Devshirme system signaled the Ottoman Empire's transition from a dynamic and expansionist power to one that was struggling with internal problems and external pressures. By the 19th century, the empire was dealing with the effects of nationalism, military defeats, and growing internal discontent, all of which further eroded the power that had been consolidated during the reign of Murad I and his successors. While the Devshirme system may have been phased out, its historical significance remains undeniable. It played a pivotal role in shaping the Ottoman military, administration, and social structure. By creating a loyal, professional military force and a cadre of civil servants dedicated to the empire, Sultan Murad I's reforms ensured the Ottomans could maintain control over their vast empire for centuries. The Devshirme system's legacy is a testament to the ingenuity and the complex legacy of the Ottoman rulers who navigated the challenges of empire building with a combination of military might and strategic reform.